On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Raptors, is Davion Mitchell a point guard or not a point guard? For better or worse, we're about to find out.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, September the 3rd. Happy long Labor Day weekend. I hope everyone have a wonderful time. Happy back to school for those of you who are doing that. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've covered the Toronto Raptors now for 10, going on 11 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. And of course, you can join us over on the Locked On Raptors Discord server, a great place to come hang out, be part of our listener family, talk about all kinds of things, whether it's basketball and all-time rankings lists or Vince Carter dunks or food or video games. It's all going on in the Discord. We'd love to see you become part of our listener community over there. Again, free to join. Link in the description of the podcast as always. Of course, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. On the audio side of things, you can find us on YouTube as well. Go subscribe and hit the notification bell button so you get a push notification to your device every single time the show premieres or goes live. It's a beautiful thing. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDINNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time, and it's podcast time here as we kick off the post-Labor Day schedule of the podcast as we get closer and closer to the return to daily episodes and, of course, the 2024-25 NBA season. And today, we're continuing our best case, worst case series of episodes with a look at Davion Mitchell, the biggest offseason addition for the Raptors. I know that's damning with faint praise, but it doesn't make it any less true. And today we're going to get into his best, worst, and most likely outcomes for this coming year. And I think he's a fascinating guy because it can go a lot of different ways. And if things go really well, it could spiral into things that are bad. If things go poorly, maybe it's not the end of the world. We'll get into all of it with the worst case and the most likely cases to come. But let's start with the best case scenario for Davion Mitchell, who, of course, spent 3 seasons with the Sacramento Kings, was a lottery pick back in the same year as Scotty Barnes. Yeah, that's correct. Back in 2021. And over the course of his time with the Kings, we've seen his role certainly de-escalate. He was pretty heavily used as a rookie, played like 28 minutes a game on a not very good Kings team. He averaged north of 4 assists a game. There were some promising signs there. Of course, he earned the name Off Night as one of the best on-ball perimeter defenders in basketball. That still applies, although the impact we'll get into maybe not there in the way that you sort of think when you think about his reputation. We'll talk about that. But overall, if we're looking at the best case scenario, coming into a new situation with Davion Mitchell, it is fresh start, no longer behind De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk and Domantas Sabonis, who obviously carries a lot of the creation burden for that Kings team when it comes to the burden of creation, when it comes to the amount of time you get the ball in your hands, the amount of time you're asked to initiate. That was not a thing Davion Mitchell was asked to do a lot the last couple of seasons. In fact, last year he played just 15 minutes a game, a career low, and he kind of found himself on the outs. Only started 4 games, also a career low last year. It was not a banner season for Davion Mitchell. There's a reason the Kings were willing to move off of him for salary savings. When it comes to, again, the best case, it's that fresh start allows him to kind of recenter. He's asked to be the backup point guard for the Raptors, who don't have many other options at that spot. And he settled us in as like a nice 3-and-D backup point guard who can do a bit of creation, who can play off of Scotty Barnes or Emmanuel Quickly, whoever he's sharing the floor with, as like the staggered in star. And he very comfortably kind of solves the Raptors' issues with backup guard play. That's a nice idea. It would be lovely if it happened. I don't think it's necessarily all that likely to take place. And it's just because Davion Mitchell doesn't have the requisite bag that you want a point guard to have when it comes to his creation package, when it comes to shooting, when it comes to all kinds of different things. Let's dive into it, right? Last year, 0.5 pull-ups attempted per game, not a very high amount. Pull-up threes are the thing that launches point guard careers in the modern NBA. It's just what happens. We've seen it with Emmanuel Quickly. We saw the downside of not having a pull-up shooting guard with Dennis Schroeder at the start of last season. Fred VanVleet became an all-star because of his pull-up shooting. Kyle Lowry became the greatest Raptor of all time because of pull-up shooting. Davion Mitchell does not bring a whole lot of pull-up to his game. Again, just half an attempt, shot 32% last year. And as a result, teams go under the screen just about every single time Davion Mitchell is getting into a screening action with a big. It's just how it works. There are times, if you go back and look at the film, and I did go and watch every single one of Davion Mitchell's assists this past season. We'll get to what I saw there in a second here. But there are times where teams will do the wrong thing and go over the screen. And in those cases, he's able to turn the corner, get downhill, or more often than not, use like the extra window of space to kind of throw a skip pass, throw a high low to a cutter. Like, he can make stuff happen when teams make mistakes against him, but you would hope that's the case because he's an NBA player. Most of the time, when teams are properly doing the scouting thing and going under the screen on him, he gets into this situation where he can't get penetration. He can't turn the corner on a guy. And instead, he's left kind of throwing the next pass on the wing to usually a waiting Malik Monk, who very often, as we'll get to in a second here, bailed Mitchell out by making something out of nothing against no advantage. And so that's the issue. You're the sort of uphill climb you have with Davion Mitchell. Just the pure concept of him as a point guard doesn't do a whole lot at the point of attack as a creator when working in pick and roll actions. That is the bread and butter of point guards, and he doesn't do it. So that's a problem. Even though I do think if you squint really hard, there are some interesting things with his passing vision, the way he kind of wrap balls around guys when he gets into the paint, has a good package of kick out passes and things like that. All that's nice, but if you can't get to the paint to begin with, then the effect of that is limited and, ends up becoming just kind of a bit part of your game. I went through all of the assists Davion Mitchell had last season. He had 134 of them. I should say I saw 133. One of them was not available on NBA.com when I went to go watch them. But of 133 assists last year for Davion Mitchell, about 1.9 a game. He played 72 games. Over the course of watching all of those, I was trying to do a bit of like a rough, not super scientific tally of the types of assists Davion Mitchell put together last year. And I kind of put him into like 4 buckets. There were quote unquote point guardy assists, stuff where you take a screen, you get downhill into the teeth of the defense, you throw a pocket pass, you throw a kick out, you use the initiating action of a possession to go and create something. Point guard stuff. That was one bucket. The second bucket was like secondary connective assists, right? Getting the ball on the weak side, making the next play, that type of stuff. The third bucket were what I called scam assists, Rajon Rondo assists, the type of assists that are fake, the ones that you use to get yourself triple doubles when you play 2K, the throw one pass to the wing and a guy shoots a 3 contested, or more often than not, a guy from a standstill without much of an advantage drives into the teeth of the defense and scores, and you for some reason get an assist. 35 of those last season for Davion Mitchell. Among the 133 assists that I watched, 49 were point guardy assists, 22 fell under the secondary or connective assists, and then there were 29 which I branded as like miscellaneous, transition, broken plays, baseline inbounds, stuff like that. So again, 133 total assists, 49 were point guardy, 22 were secondary or connective, 29 were miscellaneous, transition, broken plays, etc. And then 35 were scam. They were assists that are home cooking from the score table, giving a dude an assist where he didn't really do much to create an advantage. And oftentimes that pass for Mitchell was coming out of that situation that I talked about where the point guard, the pick and roll yields nothing. He gets no penetration and he's just kicking it over to the next guy and saying, do something with it. And again, very often it was Malik Monk doing something with it because he was the more creative agent for that Kings bench last season than Davion Mitchell was. So what do you kind of pull out of that? 49 of 133 assists were point guardy. So about 0.68 point guardy assists per game. Again, a very scientific metric here. I'm sure Clean the Glass will be calling me to brand their assist metrics as under these different buckets that I've put them into. I look forward to your call, Ben Falk. And so like, not exactly a sterling record when it comes to the stuff that you're going to ask a backup point guard to do. Less than one of those assists per game. He only averaged 1.1 pick and roll possessions operated a game last season as well. So there's just not a lot to go off of here to say, ooh, like you can pull that, and say that guy's going to be a backup point guard given a bigger role. again, maybe a fresh start, a different sort of level of responsibility, no competition for those backup guard minutes because there ain't a whole lot of it. Maybe that sort of empowers Davion Mitchell to tap into his best point guard self. And then you get the best case outcome, and everyone's very, very happy. But I don't think the numbers over the last couple seasons, the film from his assists game last year, his playmaking stuff from last year, I don't think anything really portends a big jump for him as like a steadying force as a backup point guard. Doesn't mean he can't be useful. And we'll get into the way I think he can be most useful coming up in the most likely outcome when we get to the end of the show. But I want to dig into the worst case outcome, which for Davion Mitchell, which I think is the Raptors trying to do the square peg round hole thing and in turn kind of ruining their second units. We'll get to that coming up in just one sec. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. And look, kids are always learning and growing. They're going back to school this week if you're in Canada, and sometimes we lose that curiosity as adults. What's something you like to learn? Gardening, a new language, perhaps? Maybe you want to learn how to beat your friend in bowling or any other athletic enterprise. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back to school era can come at any age. Look, a lot going on in everybody's lives. It's hard to prioritize the things you want to do over the things you have to do, but therapy can help you come up with ways to prioritize those things to make yourself a happier, more well-rounded version of you. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, back at it here, talking best and worst case outcomes for Davion Mitchell, the Toronto Raptors prized offseason edition on that beautiful day where the second round of the draft was happening. The Raptors were at the center of the basketball universe for like 2 hours of the entire offseason. What a time! Right. Talked about the best case, which is Davion Mitchell becomes the backup point guard the Raptors sorely need. The worst case is tied to that, and that is that the Raptors kind of try to force him to become the backup point guard they sorely need, but it doesn't work. It's a square peg, round hole conundrum. And basically, he's asked to play backup point guard minutes and be the backup creative agent in the guard core because there's no other options, just out of necessity. Look, I think Jamal Shed, 2, 3, 4 years from now, is probably going to be the backup point guard for the Toronto Raptors. He's got backup point guard for 8 to 10 years written all over him. I know he's a second round pick and the odds of second round picks hitting are low, but the Raptors, I think, kind of know what they're doing with point guards a lot of the time. They know what to look for. And Jamal Shed with his defense as just like a clear outlier skill, his rim pressure being a thing he's got to him. Just like the floor general leader of men stuff, the sort of less tangible, less quantifiable stuff. I think it's all there for him to have a really good shot of being the backup point guard for the Raptors long term. Asking him to do that as a rookie, really tough, especially considering I think he's going to be on Ulrich Shamshe duty with the 905, trying to help that development project along as sort of furthering his own growth, right? So there's a real chance that Davion Mitchell is just kind of all the Raptors have as a backup point guard. Yes, I think Bruce Brown will play some nominal backup point guard. He's done it in the past for the Nuggets. He's not perfect in that role, but again, you're looking for backup point guard minutes here. It's not a crazy high bar you got to clear. And one of Scotty Barnes or Emmanuel Quickley figures to be on the floor at all times, provided they're all healthy, which of course, health is a fickle thing in the NBA and you can't always count on it. And so, yeah, there's a real chance that Davion Mitchell gets asked to be the backup point guard throughout the season. And there's a real chance it just doesn't work when he does that. And like, again, I went through the numbers. I went through the breakdown of the film. I went through the sort of history of his time with the Kings, where each year his level of responsibility got downgraded while guys like De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk and even Keon Ellis got upgraded over him. It's a tough thing. History says that Davion Mitchell is not a point guard and that it's not really going to work. Again, you got to go back to his college days and sort of his first season with the Kings to really get a glimpse of what he can do as like a lead guard creator type. But again, creating separation, getting downhill. When he gets into the paint, it's great. I think he's got a really nice sort of kick out game. Once he gets among the trees, he's got a good sort of handle on, how to pass out of being the smallest guy in the interior of the floor, finds his guys on the perimeter. Like he's got good sort of knack for dump offs and things like that. And there's some other stuff he does in his playmaking repertoire, in particular the transition stuff, where he's really good with quick hit aheads and lob passes. He loves to throw a lob for a dunk in transition. We love that. That's going to fit right into what the Raptors do. But in terms of shepherding the second unit as a point guard, I just don't know if it's all there. Again, this is like a roster construction issue for the Raptors. It's not on Davion Mitchell to go be something he's not. It's on the Raptors to go get someone who can be that thing and maybe put Davion Mitchell in a better position to succeed, which I do think there's a chance he'll get a chance to sort of show. We'll get to that coming up in the most likely outcomes. But look, I think last season, if you look at it, the sort of numbers are not sexy. We talked about the pick and roll stuff. We talked about the pull-up shooting. It's not really all that indicative of a guy who's going to do a ton as a lead guard or a creative guard in the second unit. And if you couple that with his defense maybe not being all the way there like it was a couple years ago, that creates a real problem, right? If he's supposed to be your sort of ace guard defender, you can throw on opposing lead guards. Maybe you play him a little bit with Emmanuel quickly, and you can throw him on the tough assignment guards. If he's not really providing a ton of impact from that spot, that makes all of this even more hard to reckon. And if you look at the numbers, the Kings the last couple seasons better when Davion Mitchell has been off the floor defensively. You know, his first year, he was excellent. The team was way better on defense when he was on the floor. It was all there. The last couple seasons, not so much. 1.3 and 1.5 points per 100 possessions worse with him on the floor, respectively, over the last two seasons. And that's kind of surprising considering the starters for the Kings, not exactly loaded with a bunch of defensive aces. You would figure Davion Mitchell comes in with those second units and he's able to sort of steady the hand and the defense gets better than what the starters were able to put out. No, that's not how it's worked out over the last couple of years when the Kings have become a credible, real basketball franchise. It's been sort of a lot of bluster and a lot of individual moments of really nice on-ball defense, but not a ton of impact because look, I don't care how good you are as a point of attack defender. Only so much impact you can have on team defense when you are 6'1", especially if you're not quite at that off night nickname earning level of on-ball defense, which Mitchell hasn't quite been at over the last couple of seasons. He's still good. There's still really high highs of his on-ball defense, and there are going to be moments where he blows you away, especially considering what we've seen in terms of point of attack on-ball defense over the last couple of seasons from this team. But I don't know if you can count on it to be off-night level good because it just hasn't been the last couple of seasons, and the impact has not been there for the Kings when he's been out there. Like the benches have not had excellent defensive numbers. Then you look at the offensive stuff, and that's even worse over the last few seasons. And look, a lot of this is part of the Kings have a really good offense and their starters are fantastic and they score in bunches. But last season, 4.7 points per 100 possessions worse with Mitchell on the floor for the offense. 4 points per 100 possessions worse the season prior to that, even as a rookie where he had the ball in his hands a lot more, minus 4.9 points per 100 possessions worse when he's on the floor for offense. It's just he doesn't drive good offense. In the last couple of seasons, he hasn't driven upticks in defense either, which is something you want here from your backup point guard. And because of the lack of anyone else to play the position, if they don't trust Jamal Shed right away, maybe they do. Maybe Jamal Shed comes in and by midseason, he's kind of earned that job as an older rookie and you feel okay about it. And again, we'll get into some of the Bruce Brown has a chance to play some backup point guard. We know quickly and Scotty are going to have the ball a lot. Maybe Olynyk and Pirtle ratchet up even more what their creation stuff is from the elbows and stuff like that. And you know, like that will help the lack of a backup point guard here. But if you're trying to have a steadying backup point guard presence and you're going to force Davion Mitchell into it, I think that is where his worst case outcome lies, right? If you're trying to have him do this thing that he's proven he's not exactly good at, and you're just doing it over and over because you have no other options or you refuse to tap into other options, then he's going to have a bad season. He might be out of the league and you're not going to get a ton of those second units. You're going to be really hoping that you can win your second unit minutes in like 4-2 stretches over 5-6 minutes with Mitchell on the floor. And again, his defensive impact has not exactly been there either. So if you're trying to win those stretches 4-2, you might end up losing them 10-4, and all of a sudden your bench becomes a problem like it was last year. And so, yeah, it's tough. I think the way you avoid that is by not force feeding the point guard stuff to Davion Mitchell. You give him a shot out of the gate. If it works, awesome. Then you're on track to the best case outcome. But if in the first few weeks it's just not looking like it's there for him as a second unit backup lead guard type, then I think you have to pivot and put him in a spot where I think he stands the best chance of succeeding. And if he succeeds in that spot, it creates some interesting conundrums for the Raptors next summer. We're going to get into what I think is the most likely outcome here for Davion Mitchell and why it might be good, but could also spiral into bad pretty quickly for a team that really, really seems to like to pay a lot of money and years to role players. We'll get to that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time, the single best place to buy tickets for the events you want to go to. You know me, I am a Game Time truther. I love Game Time. I like to peruse it even for stuff I'm not going to go to. Didn't end up going to Sean Paul at Bud Stage last week, but I sure as hell was on there looking at tickets every chance I could to see if I could strike while the iron was hot and find something. Didn't quite find it, but those Game Time picks are very nice, and Game Time picks are a wonderful new feature with Game Time that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It's a wonderful thing. Maybe you want to go check out the Blue Jays this month. They're not very good, but they got some young guys doing cool things, and Vlad's hitting bombs all over the place. Maybe you want to go catch a Jays game. You can do that and get real cheap tickets over at Game Time. Go and peruse, and the tickets only get cheaper as you get closer to game time as well. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDINNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDINNBA for $20 off. Closing things out here on your Tuesday post-Labor Day edition of Locked On Raptors, the best case, worst case episode here on Davion Mitchell, the fourth in our series of best and worst case episodes. You can go back last week and check out the episodes on Emmanuel Quickley and Grady Dick and RJ Barrett. Also a reminder, Locked On NBA, go check it out. It's a great daily show hosted by the local host of the Locked On NBA channel, pitching in a couple days a week here and there, talking about all of the biggest stories in the NBA, all through the offseason. Lots of season preview stuff going on right now, so go check it out. All right, let's wrap it up here with the most likely case scenario for Davion Mitchell, as I see it at least. I'm not the be-all, end-all. I'm not a soothsayer or anything like that, but I do think there is, a little happy medium to be found here with Davion Mitchell that doesn't involve him being a point guard in spirit. I think it more involves him being like an off guard who can do some of the things he succeeded with last year and kind of tap into his best skills without having to be sort of overburdened with stuff he's just not very good at. Put guys in positions to succeed. Ask guys to do things they're good at. That seems like it should be a pretty core tenet for most coaches, and I hope that ends up being the case here with Davion Mitchell, that they don't do the thing where they try to make something that's not going to happen. They're trying to make fetch happen. It ain't going to happen. So when it comes to Mitchell and what I think is most likely outcome is I think he settles in as a decent enough 8th or 9th man off the bench who plays regular minutes, plays 20, 22 minutes a night for the Raptors, maybe more in spots. Maybe you close with him in certain lineups and situations because you need that on-ball defense. Maybe an opposing guard is torching you and you want to alleviate the burden on Emmanuel quickly to go chase that guy around. There are worlds in which Davion Mitchell closes games for this team, which I think is pretty standard for any 6th, 7th, 8th man in a rotation. Not the primary closer, but certainly moments call for it. And I think that's a chance here for Davion Mitchell. On the watch through of all his assists that I went through in the first segment there, I think the stuff that actually looked the best to me, and it was the lowest volume of stuff, but the stuff that looked the best to me, just to the eye test, was where he was attacking as a secondary driver. Someone else has created the advantage that he so often struggles to create. It swings to him on the wing or in the corner, and he does something with it. As a playmaker, he gets downhill. He throws those kick-out passes. He dumps off to rolling bigs or cutting bigs, baseline, stuff like that, little dump-offs. There's a lot there with Mitchell as he can turn the corner. He's pretty quick. He's got a good first step. Not super good from a standstill where he's creating, but against a tilted defense that's out of position, absolutely he's got enough juice to get around those guys and get downhill. And again, I think the way he sort of sees the floor once he gets amongst the trees is a pretty real skill of his. I just think you don't get enough of that when he is asked to be a pick and roll creator, where getting penetration is not a thing he's often able to do. As a secondary guy, that's there a little bit more. I also think as a connective passer, he's pretty impressive. He's someone who doesn't hold the ball. He doesn't over dribble. He's always making the next pass in the sequence, even if, it's like a pretty standard, all right, around the horn, swing it to the corner type of thing. He's not commandeering the offense. He's not ruining the flow of the offense. He's making the next play quick. He's always looking to make that next quick read. I think he certainly fits the 0.5 second ethos of a Darko Rajakovic offense. That I think fits in nicely as a connective off-ball player as well. Last year, he shot 37% on a very low volume of catch and shoot threes, but that's a decent clip for a guy who's always struggled from deep. If he can scale it up to 2.5 or 3 a game, then you're getting into best case scenario territory, at least as an off-ball guy. And I think that's doable. Playing with Quickly, playing with Scotty, Jakob Poeltl, Kelly Olynyk. He's playing 20, 22 minutes a night. I think he can upscale that volume a little bit, and he's going to get wide open looks. Like, teams right now, it stands, do not care if Davion Mitchell is shooting. If he does it for another season, maybe that starts to change. But I think going into this year, he's going to get a pretty steady diet of completely unopposed looks. Hopefully he can knock him in at a rate like he did last year. Hey, 38, 39% on those catch and shoots. That would be even better. And I think there is a real chance that we do see him tap into being that sort of lead opposing guard defender as well, where he's playing off ball on offense, but on defense, you're throwing him on your Trae Youngs, your Kyrie Irvings, your who else? Damian Lillard's, like the best opposing guards for the stretches he's out there. I think he's got a chance to tap into that and kind of be what we thought Dennis Schroeder would be at the start of last year, what we saw from Schroeder in the very brief stretch where he was an awesome 6-man for the Raptors. I think that's there. And again, that sort of fits into that 6th, 7th, 8th man role. He's got a real defined thing that he does well off the bench, and he's asked to do it quite a bit. I think that leads to a pretty nice situation where, again, you have a guy who is a steady rotation guy for you. You know he's going to play for you every night, and you know in theory he's giving you really good at point of attack defense and three-point shooting and connective passing and secondary driving at the other end. Also off the driving stuff too. A number that popped for me, is kind of looking at his cleaning the glass stuff from last year, is Davion Mitchell shot 75% at the rim last season. That's really impressive. Again, how do you get him going to the rim more? It's not by asking him to create a pick and roll. It's by asking him to make stuff happen off the catch and getting downhill from there. I think that's a way to kind of tap into a thing he's clearly got, is finishing package around the rim. Put him off the ball. That's all I'm saying here, man. Put him off the ball. Playing with Quickly, playing with Brown and Scotty in second units, or Scotty and Kelly, or whomever you're throwing out there. Playing with other guys who can take on the lion's share of the creation burden. Playing with Jonathan Mobo, for Christ's sake. I don't care. Other guys who can pass and create and do stuff. Have him work off the ball of those guys. Feed off open looks. And again, drive, kick, do that thing to keep the offense flowing. I think that's the avenue for a really good season for Davion Mitchell. And I think the Raptors have the environment where they can probably do that if they are all right going other ways with the backup point guard job, and they're not force feeding that position to Mitchell and just saying, well, it's you or nothing. I really hope that's not the case, even though the rest of the options aren't incredible. I think Mitchell falls into the bucket of the unincredible options for that position. And so there's no need to force it if it's not working for him. Try something else. Of course, there's a version where this sort of most likely and pretty nice outcome for Mitchell ends up being kind of a bad thing. And that is because the Raptors have shown recently they have a real propensity for perhaps slightly overpaying and certainly giving too many years to role players. And if they continue that trend, the Kem Birch, the Chris Boucher, the Thad Young, the maybe Kelly Olynyk, we'll see how that deal ages over the next couple of seasons. If they continue that trend of maybe overcommitting to fringy sort of 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th man quality guys who maybe can't play high leverage minutes in the playoffs for you, who are sort of somewhat replaceable on the open market or with draft picks, then you get into the issue of like, okay, are we paying Davion Mitchell after a pretty nice season as the 8th man and locking in more money at the back end of the roster? You would hope that just Bobby Webster, Masai Ujiri will not do that and sort of see clearer pastures with cleaner books and all of that, and not overcommit to a guy who has a decent season, an 8th man quality season. But we've seen it happen. We think it's in their recent track record. You'd hope they've learned from that, but we'll see. That's the downside of like a nice season for Mitchell, where he becomes a nice off-ball player, is they feel like they hit on the second draft guy and they overcommit and sort of overcompensate for that and then put themselves back in trouble. Because look, in the new NBA, under the new CBA and the second apron and all of the penalties that come with the tax and everything, it's not going to be hard for a couple of iffy back of the roster contracts to really start to cause you problems elsewhere on the roster. You got to be smart and efficient and kind of ruthless with those back end spots, as gross as it is to say. I wish everyone could get paid. If Davion Mitchell gets paid after this year, awesome. I'm very happy for Davion Mitchell if that happens, but it's got to be a pretty damn good season, I think, from him for me to really buy into the idea of paying him to be like a core bench piece going forward. Maybe that happens, right? I'm rooting for it to happen. I'd love to be wrong. I would love that, but I don't know if I am. And so if things go the way I think they might here, where he's like he sort of has like maybe the best season of his career so far, but it's not like blow your socks off good or knock your socks off good, blow your doors off, whatever the phrase is. I don't know. We can blend phrases. Who cares? But like if it's not that good, but they're still opting to pay him, like that's how that becomes maybe actually the worst case scenario here, as opposed to him just being not very good and leaving at the end of the season and you just kind of wash your hands with it and say, hey, we tried, didn't work. If it works a little bit, but not a lot, and he gets paid, and then maybe that spirals into being the worst case outcome a couple years from now, which again, I hate to say, I want all players to get paid. It's gross talking about players in a way where it's like, I don't want that guy to get paid because that's bad for the books. But like, you have to think about it that way with the way the dumb NBA has set things up and made being a fan super fun with their really cool and punitive and really difficult to understand salary structure. It's great. But yeah, we'll see. I think, I would bank on this being Mitchell's best season of his career, put into a role where he's able to actually thrive, build on the stuff he did well last year, cut out some of the fat. But I still don't think we're looking at a year from now as Davion Mitchell being a core part of this team. And if we are, like, it better have been a really good season. It's an interesting thing to watch. We're going to leave it there for now. We'll come back tomorrow and get into Jakob Poeltl. We're going to talk about him with Vivek Jacob. Looking forward to that as we continue our best case, worst case run of episodes here. In the meantime, you can follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Much appreciated when you support the show. However you choose to support the show, you can also, of course, find us on YouTube and do the whole thing over there. And we'll be back again tomorrow talking yak with Big V. Until then, thanks for hanging. Bye-bye.